Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Let me know if the mic is working because I've had trouble with this in the past. Someone tell me whether I'm on. There's only two of you, so one of you tell me if I'm on. Is my mic working? Can you hear me? Well, I gotta kind of assume that you can. Oh, good. Okay. All right. Hello, those of you who are here. I see two people. So no, three. No, 2 people so far. That's totally fine. Sort of. Um, I've been a little out of the loop this week. I've been in Mexico, um, where I have a property that, I probably shouldn't have bought, but, it's going all right. But I also been out of the loop of the addiction to, um, having ideas, putting them out in video, and getting some feedback back. And, um, and also my numbers are down, my views are down. And so that's always an interesting tension for me to deal with because part of what I'm trying to do here is not care about that. Try to be as precise as possible in understanding who we are, regardless of whether it pleases or flatters, um, or interests. That is, this is ultimately I'll end up doing this work alone, perhaps. Just trying to understand. And at the same time, I'm a human being, and so I feel the ups and downs a little bit when my numbers go down, when I'm not appealing enough. So I'm always trying to figure out how do I maximize the appeal of the content that matters to me. Um, so here's one thing I want to suggest. Hey, Michael, good to see you. This is for all of you. I don't think this is the right medium for the main circle we turn out to be. I mean, Shirley shows up, Rev Walt shows up, Michael shows up. Maybe this is a good medium for you. Maybe you don't want to be in a direct conversation. Maybe for whatever reason. I mean, some of the people who join the study group don't want to be seen or involved in that direction. But I would much prefer to actually have this as a Skype. What do you call it? A Zoom-like conversation. At this point, it's not as productive for us and as engaging for us as it would be if we actually were able to talk to each other. Um, More video to video, and you don't even have to show your face. If you don't want to show your face, you can be an audio in the conversation, but I think it would be a useful interaction. um so there's a I already have the study group. You all know about that, and by all I mean the six of us here. But I'm going to invite you to email me if I don't already have your email. Even if I do, it would be easier for me if you said, if you sent me your email and say, I would like to be part of a conversation that isn't YouTube, isn't um, interrupted by ads, isn't you in the peanut gallery writing text to me, but is us actually hanging out and talking. And I would also like to know what topics you would want because it may be that I would do kind of specialized conversations, and it would be conversations. That's the point of it. One that I'm thinking about is one that deals directly with this big question that drives all my work. You could say, "What the actual fuck are we?" That is certainly part of it, but it's also how does change? Um, it's trying to understand in strictly physical terms how there could ever be change. We call it emergence. It's a study of emergence, but emergence isn't an answer. It's a name for what we have to explain, which is how change happens. Apparently, we were very unlikely human beings, or you could say whatever city you live near or anything. That was physically possible but really unlikely even 100 years ago, let alone 1400 years ago, 14 billion years ago. So apparently likelinesses and unlikelinesses change such that if you were to show up as some kind of chance physical configuration of matter um 5 billion years ago, you'd very likely disappear quickly. And yet here you are, very likely to be around tomorrow. That's interesting to me. Um, so that the name of that research field that I've been in for a while, the name we've given it is emergent dynamic constraints. It's fancy words. I can unpack them. I got to stay away from the fancy words in order to do this work. What we call it is teleodynamics. Telos means trying. Uh, Teleology is the study of goal-directed behavior. It's not a great name for it, but teleodynamics is about changes that make it um, so that you end up with organisms with aims. So what I'm saying is, email me, please. I want to start a conversation that we do by not on Google Meet. It's cheap, it's free. You don't have to have a subscription, and we would meet there the same way the study group does. But we would just be actually talking about what the actual fuck are we, and how did we emerge? It's basically, you could think of it as origins of life, but all the way out to us, all the way from the origins of life from chemistry to assholes. To me, it's of one piece. I don't get to smuggle in terms for things like assholes. I have to explain them, how they emerged. So I have to keep track of the difference between explanations and things yet to be explained. And one of my biggest frustrations with the way the science works around, let's say, of consciousness, is that we're using high level unexplained explanations and we're forgetting that we have to explain them. So this would be a very accessible conversation. And it could end up being a feeder to another conversation that happens every week, um, which is a bit more technical, um, but anybody's invited. There's an art collector in there, or an art trader who was a former wine dealer. We've got biologists, we've got philosophers, we've got psychiatrists. Um, we got all sorts. We've got students. We meet. There's about 30 of us that end up showing up at these meetings once a week. Terry Deacon leads it. He's the guy I've been studying with and collaborating with for 30 years. He's totally accessible as a person. I mean, like I've said before, he's never once pulled rank on me. I've worked with him for 30 years. I just came back from a dog walk with him. We jam. He's great this way. He's not one of these chest beating academics. He's a Harvard/Berkeley neuroscientist. He's at Berkeley now. He was at Harvard when I met him. They think he's really smart up there in the academic world, but they also think he's uncommonly accessible. He was to me. I was a guy who had just come out of the New Age spiritual world, um, and got interested in evolutionary psychology. And then I met him at a conference, and he took me on. While he was at Harvard, he agreed to be on the PhD committee for my podunk university. He didn't give a shit about any of that stuff. He heard my curiosity, and we've been jamming together ever since. I did get my PhD through him, but not at Harvard. Um, no, that's what's nice. But at the same time, there's some discipline, some mental discipline one has to use in order to do that research carefully, in order to not employ high-level unexplained explanations. And that's the point I'm trying to get across about that. Um, and to also employ the power of neutral thinking. And it's a major problem even in the meeting that we have every week, like the one we had last night, which is that people kind of hope for this or that outcome. It's like, I just want the truth, but it better be flattering or better be approving of what I already assume. It takes an enormous amount of discipline to keep from smuggling in these unexplained explanations at a high level and to keep our appetites out of it. Um, but there's still some technical language, and I think we could get to that. Jeff, uh, you should be already on the list. I'm going to work my way up this list of comments while I was monologuing there. Yeah, please sign up if you're at all interested. And it turns out when I was young, I wanted to save the world. I wanted to be part of that. I wrote it up this morning in as the Jesus paradox. Let me pull it up here. Let's see, the Jesus paradox, which still lives with me in a way. I was just talking about it. To save humanity, I aim to be a top influencer promoting humility with flocks of appreciative fans. I think that's a challenge that I live with, I manage, I exercise. Um, uh, and at the same time, to get over that, as I had to, because I realized, no, I wasn't my prospects of actually influencing things pretty low. I had a conversation with a mainland China friend who said, "Why would I study politics? I'm one of over a billion people here. I have no influence on it." I didn't go that route. I got interested instead in, okay, well, what is this situation? And I did do a video this last week on just that subject as applies to all areas of life. I distinguish between a venting slash crowing kind of therapeutic conversation where I say, well, if I were in charge of the world, I would do this, and people ought to follow me, and that proves I'm one of the good guys. And the people who bother me are bad guys, et cetera, et cetera. I deal with that a fair amount in my consulting practice. That is, I've got clients who are frustrated and they have to vent. And I tell them, vent all you want. But remember that the meter's running, and remember that I'm here as a strategic consultant. And the next step after that is not strategy. You don't go from venting to strategy effectively. You might have leverage for a while. That's what the Trumpists are doing. They went straight from, I mean, their scornography is how they come up with their inept and bootless strategies that won't work. They won't make America great again. No, you need a step inside in between where to get what you want, you set aside what you want, you employ the power of neutral thinking as best you can as a human being with all sorts of feelings driving us. You set aside what you want. You don't pay attention. Is it good for me? Is it good for me? Or is it bad for me? None of that. And you get analytic. And I do think it yields better strategies. Um, so that's what we'd be doing. That's what I'm kind of doing anyway with my this origins of this cradle to grave research I'm engaged in, from the origins of life, the cradle of life, to our grave situation. Is I'm trying to employ the power of neutral thinking. We would do that together, and there would be plenty of biases that would show up in it, and we point them out. The biases towards wanting, I just want the truth, but it is bias. It better be flattering. We try to set that aside. That's actually what philosophy comes to mean, at least for me. And I found out this last week that it sort of meant that for Plato too. He was fascinating. I just reread Plato's Republic, and boy, is it fascinating. You've got these giddy, goody-goody, godly types who have just discovered that they have this newfangled contraption called language, and they're going to solve it all with these high-level abstractions that they get out of language. They're going to, and basically, it sounds now speed listening to it. So it sounds like these incredibly giddy, nerdy, probably on the spectrum guys, Plato and Glaucon, rolling up their sleeves and saying, "Okay, let's design the perfect society from scratch." And no, I would love to see those two have at it again, given the 2,400 years of history that have passed since then, and say, "Okay, well, we got this wrong, we got that wrong." We didn't foresee the recursions, the ways that you can um, take our strategy for a better world and turn it into a strategy um, for getting what you want. Let's see, that also came up for me yesterday. Flags, cheapest way for traitors to pose as patriots. Crosses, cheapest way for sinners to pose as saints. A source of cred becomes cover for crud. That's about recursion. That's about if you take something that is considered virtuous and you strip it down to some ritual symbol like a flag or a cross, what we would call in this work that we do a compression. That you take you eliminate all the details, you focus on one thing. Flag equals patriot. Christian equals virtuous. And then it becomes cover for every asshole. So that's something that Plato didn't foresee. He almost gets close to it a couple of times, but he then taps it down with something pat. Fascinating. I have so much fun with intellectual history, just looking at the mistakes that people have made along the way and admiring them for trying. I mean, you really could tell that he wants to try to figure out how to make a good society. Um, so I admire his efforts, and it's the same reason I love nonsense so much. I love nonsense poetry or nonsense fiction or comedy because you're watching the pitfalls we fall into, the basins of self-attraction. That is, we're talking about what's real, what's real, what's real. But I actually want to slide down in here and say something positive about myself. I could use a hug, basically, is what it comes down to. Um, Jeff, in answer to your question, go ahead and email me again. It'd just be easier for me to do that. Of all the people involved in this conversation, I know you want to be involved in that. What the actual fuck are we conversation more, and yet it would still be a benefit. Um, let's see, like a protest. I'm just going up the list here. Like a protest. William Griffin. Hello, William. Like a protest, I attend every Friday at 2 p.m. It's just a tough row to hoe. Keep at it. I must watch this later. Okay, thank you. Yeah, and actually, that's an interesting aspect of it. A couple of connections there I want to make to what William said there. Um, I was maybe 30 years ago. I was out on a walk with a girlfriend who had become a lawyer. Her story was fascinating. How she became a lawyer. Um, uh, uh, she had been a stripper at a bar in San Diego. She well to earn enough money to make it into ballet school. She was earning money for ballet school, and down in San Diego, there's a bunch of scientists, and she ended up. There's this one scientist there who also was an artist on the side, and so he was a sculptor. And he asked if she would model for him, and she was wary about that. And then she talked to the owner of the bar, and he said, "No, he's a decent guy." And for 3 years, she was his model, and he would make sculptures of her. And then one day he said, "Hey, come on, I want to show you something." And he pulled out of his drawer a Nobel Prize he had won for having discovered messenger RNA. And then she decided, "No, I'm too tall and to be a ballerina, and therefore I'm going to become a lawyer." And he wrote her letter of recommendation, bless her heart. But and when she was my girlfriend, I had the honor, I had the privilege to have sculptures of her cuteness as created by a Nobel Prize winner. And she took them with her when she left. But anyway, that was a long-winded side story. Probably a little self-boost in there, or at least that what an amazingly diverse and lucky life I've had. Just lucky, ridiculously lucky to be able to think about this stuff. But at one point, we're taking a walk, and she says, "I want to make a difference. I want to feel like I'm making a difference." And I realized as she said that, and she meant that kind of synonymously, like they both meant the same thing. No, they're really different. Um, it's where I got this idea of flying by instrument. A pilot can fly in the dark uh, just by and in fog or in clouds just by following instruments. You get an instrument license and you can do that. And I was thinking, that's how we are emotionally. I want to make good decisions, but the way I know whether I've made a good decision is the feeling that I've made a good decision, which I can get much more easily without due diligence than with due diligence. Um, so that came up, and then there's another version of the thing that came up for me years ago. My dad had cancer for 13 years before he died of it, and he started to do this meditation, which was popular back in the 80s when he was doing this meditation. There's a whole theory that you could basically it's kind of Christian science like. It's that you could, if you visualize your own cure, it will help you get cured or even could cure you. And he said, "I don't believe any of that claptrap. I don't. It's just what he called a votive act. It was a way of him showing that he was in favor uh, of surviving the cancer." He didn't actually believe in it. The way my dad said it, he said that I do this meditation every day. I do long division sums in my head because it's a votive act. I just have to show that I want that I'm for it. So this has also been an issue for me around activism. I don't want to get distracted by the therapeutic sense that I'm making a difference. Um, I don't want to just feel like I'm making a difference, and yet I can understand how that would be very therapeutic. Um, yeah. Oh, compression, Toto. Yeah, that was the whole conversation I had with Terry this morning is about compression. So there are dynamics, how things change. And then there are ways in which we take some feature of that and turn it into a static form. Um, the first example of this would be DNA. Um, so you've got this functional living being. Our approach to the origins of life is different from most. The most popular approach these days is that DNA came first and that it's got information in it. It's an information bearing molecule. Well, information is one of those high level unexplained explanations. I have to be able to explain what information is. And anything can become information. A molecule can become about something, but it only becomes about something when someone interprets it. So that's why I think of it not as the study of information theory or semiotics, the study of science, but the study of interpretation, hermeneology, the study of the emergence and nature of interpretation. Okay, um, so from our perspective, you actually have to have a functioning organism before you have DNA. Whereas most people think, well, you got this molecule and it starts replicating, and pretty soon you've got it. Okay, so what is DNA? It's a template. It doesn't do any work. It's a constraint. It's a record of constraints, likelinesses and unlikelinesses recorded in material static form that then gets interpreted by the living being. You can't actually just start with replicating molecules that you claim contain uh, some information. That's magic talk. It's like there's this cost-free other realm called information. So I have to actually be able to explain how that comes about. Compression is a really big deal for us now. And today, Terry and I made some real progress on understanding it because yesterday in the meeting that we had there, the usual meeting, 30 people, um, some of us present in the room, plenty of us present by Zoom, and then the the meeting and meat space, we go out and eat some meat. We went to a Mexican restaurant last night, but we were talking about parallels between what's going on with DNA and what goes on in AI. Um, AI is not understanding. It's not trying to do anything. It's a token processing system that works with a very important, fairly recent form of compression, the recognition that you could translate all of what we care about, all of the words for what we care about, into tokens that are simply zeros and ones. So we were having a conversation yesterday about the parallels and contrasts between how that happened pre Luca. Luca is the last common living ancestor. And by the time it arrives, there is this common language of DNA. It's not exactly language, but it's a symbolic process. It's compression, and it gets decompressed through the dynamics of interpretation of it that goes on for a living being at the origins of life, um, and it constrains what's likely and unlikely to happen. That's what DNA is doing, but it's a constraint. It's just a static constraint. We do that with text. And now we're doing that with zeros and ones. And there are all sorts of advantages and disadvantages, excitements and disappointments when you do that. When you have a compression, you can play with it in ways you can't when you don't. If you have dynamics, this is what Karl Popper described as letting your hypotheses die in your stead. With language, human beings can imagine using the compression of language all sorts of possibilities, and they don't have to try them out at home. They can try them out in their heads. Um, and so we have that capacity. Animals have it, but we have it beyond that. Uh, so that's called Popperian mind, and it's there in animals. Like a dog can think about, I could go down these steps, but I probably shouldn't. I should jump off this cliff, but I probably shouldn't. But with language, we can do it beyond that. What Dan Dennett called Gregorian mind, which is named after a guy who basically pointed out that we can refine our tools for doing it with language. So anyway, and then with so we're talking about really low cost relative to trying things out in the real world. Low cost, easily manipulated. You can vary things very easily. And now we've got a new explosion of this new medium for compression in AI. And so trying to understand that and make good sense of it is what we're talking about. Let's see. Um, let's see. That's how the ball. I'm just looking up the list here, and I'm probably missed some things. And remember this. So the two invites here. One invite is please email me. It's just my initials at my name, js@jeremysherman.com. You find it on any of my YouTube videos. Email me if you'd like to be having this jam session on equal footing where other people can talk and we can see them if they want to be seen and other people can listen in. It's all fine. But I'm seeing the limitations of this medium for having the conversation I want to have. And tell me what you're interested in talking about in that email. So that's a request to you. Tell me what you'd be interested in talking about. We already have that study group about how do you engage with people there's no talking to. How do you talk to an absolutist? How do you engage with someone like that? So we have that. That's going on every 2 weeks. Nicely attended, very productive. I learned from those conversations. I learned all sorts of things. I had a wonderful conversation this week with a person who joined that group, person out of LA who had been who'd been driving around for Lyft, and otherwise. She had a job before that had her driving around. She couldn't stand NPR. She listened to Rush Limbaugh. She got all the way into it, and then January 6th happened, and she opened up in the most exquisite way. She'd had no interest in politics before she started hearing uh, Rush Limbaugh's scornography, got way into it, and then realized that she had made a mistake. And she's she's got her own internal version of Socrates' dialectic going on. She's what I call intellectually bi-curious. When she sees herself talking in inconsistent ways, she's intrigued by it. She's curious about what she can learn from it. I found her totally impressive to me. On the assumption that if I were her, given her life until then, she was born into Jehovah's Witness, um, and had broken from that. Um, I would be doing it. I could only hope I would be doing what she did. That she had a cosmic wedgie when January 6th was a cosmic wedgie for her. And instead of doubling down or pretending that none of this matters or doing any of the standard easy moves one can do to self-flatter and deny that you've made an error, she walked right into it. She's really interesting. I love that kind of mind, and only hope that I could be that. So one thing I'm asking for is the email, and the other is if you've got a question or comment you want me to respond to, put it in capital letters. I know you won't be shouting at me. I mean, you might be, and that'd be fine too. I was shouted at by 3 people this morning before 9 o'clock. That is, 3 people told me I was a pompous, full of shit, know-it-all dick. um, could be, can't rule it out. If I was, I'd be the last to know. Okay, so anyway, my dog thought about it. I should go to the bathroom, safest place in the house during this tornado last night. Good, there you go, Toto. That's an example of a dog doing Popperian mind. Now we have to be really careful about uh, the tendency to anthropomorphize is really strong in humans. Dan Dennett referred to it as the intentional stance. We assume that if we see two balls on the screen moving this way, that this one is chasing that one because it wants to catch it somehow. We have to be really careful about that at all levels if we're going to do the work carefully. So is the dog thinking? It depends on what you mean by thinking. Um, I would argue, and I'm amazed by how much pushback I get on this. I would argue that really different thinking in words than what a dog does. A dog doesn't think in words, and it's almost impossible for humans to imagine what it would be like to be thinking without words. There's something going on. There's a processing going on there. Would you call it thinking? Some would say yes, some would say no. One idea is that thought or thinking is imagining what's not immediately in front of you. Um, it's hypotheticals or counterfactuals. I'm working on a video that's related to that, which is the question, um, where is or what is that which could have happened but didn't? Um, if you're a determinist, you think it doesn't exist. It's only in your head, and it causes you undue worry. So don't don't think about it. Well, it doesn't exist. It's only in your head. I get that. You know, Santa Claus doesn't exist, but he's in my head. Um, but at the same time, that's not how I think about the existence of that which could have happened but didn't. Not quite the same as Santa Claus, not quite the same as a rhinoceros in a tutu twirling the universe on the on its horn. It's a different realm. Still working out how I'd say that. Okay. Um, let's see. Yes. By the way, Toto. Yes, you could join directly into that 30-person group. He doesn't, I mean, in a way, I do some screening for it, um, uh, because we want to keep that conversation really focused. Um, and I do that as a favor for Terry. So if you're interested in having that, first of all, he's got presentations online. So look up a presentation by Terrence Deacon. Um, he's very different from me. He's by temperament. He's a total nerd and very flat and affect. Doesn't use colorful language. Um, a deep soul, but it doesn't come across the way he's not as informal as me. And it used to be a major problem between us, just this difference in temperament between us. I think I can make it more accessible, and therefore I'm a useful feeder. But he's accessible. You can have contact with him. That's my point about him. Um, uh, there we go. Let's see. Let's see. Where are we here? I want to talk about Terry's book, Incomplete Nature. I'm absolutely loving it. Great, great. So um, now, Michael, I don't know if you got a chance to look at my book first, and there's no reason you need to. In many ways, his is more rigorous and more complete a story of incompleteness. The incompleteness he's referring to there is, you could say, an anti-determinism. That is, that there is emergence, that change changes. It's also a reference to Kurt Gödel's argument about the incompleteness of math. One point that Terry made in passing on a walk a while ago is that the human mind craves completeness at the expense of consistency. So when I'm talking about this person down in Los Angeles who's intellectually curious, that's the same. Intellectually bi-curious, that is, she's interested in inconsistencies. That's what I'm admiring there. Because I'll talk to people left, right, doesn't matter. None of that matters. Who just want to say, well, no, I meant to say that, or no, I'm right despite that inconsistency, or the one I hate the most and find the most charming is, um, if you hear an inconsistency in what I'm saying, you must be misinterpreting me. This is a bid for completeness. There's nothing for me to learn here. You just misunderstood me, and you probably did it on purpose just to make me look bad. This is a standard move towards completeness. The one I got 3 times this morning before breakfast. So anyway, I'm glad you're liking Incomplete Nature. I'm glad you're getting it. Some people have trouble with it because it's kind of dense. And that's why I wrote my book, Neither Ghost Nor Machine. Um, yeah. Okay. Good. That's a fine way to do it, Michael. And the other thing is that our interpersonal clashes were strongest in me writing that book. It was fascinating how we worked things through on that, and how ragged it made both of us, me and Terry. So here I am trying to deliver as simply as possible, no simpler, his theories without any bastardization. And by his nature, it was very uncomfortable because he thought you couldn't say it simpler, or that if I said it simpler, it would distort the theory. I get it. I appreciate that. That's how we started our walks. Was him wanting to go over drafts of chapters in the book and clarify things for me. It was great. And I also came out of it thinking, okay, I've graduated. I can now say this stuff any way I want. I've been through that with him. In the meantime, he came away thinking, no, this is a guy who's truly engaged and is not trying to do, he used to call it, he used to worry that I was going to turn it into Oprah. And he's got an intense fear of being dumbed down, um, which is sometimes been counterproductive for him because in making his point as in dotting all I's, crossing all T's, he sometimes loses his audience, which has the backfire effect of making it so they misunderstand him. So I'm trying to make it as simple as possible, no simpler. Okay. But anyway, yeah. And let me just say, it's a great intellectual pursuit. It's lots of fun. All the things I say to the study group about congratulations, thank you, and congratulations for your interest in these questions about assholes. I'd say it also about this interest in what we actually are. Thank you for being interested in it, Michael. Congratulations for being interested in it. I can think of no better use of I and Brian Cox, the science educator, can think of no better use of this rare configuration of chemistry we are that can speculate about the entire universe and what we are in it, um, than speculating about it. I mean, there's lots of other things that I do for fun, but I just feel lucky to be on that question and not giving myself the shortcut, easy ways out with high level, unexplained explanations, which you see in religion, which you see in science. You see this desire for completeness that is so intense that people take all sorts of shortcuts and say, I've solved reality. And whether it's religion, whether it's politics, whether it's science, I see it everywhere. Is that you can, if you come up against a confusion or a complication, you can say, you can just posit another magical realm, mysterious realm, the realm of information, the realm of universal love, um, the realm of patriotism for a Trumpist, and say, well, there's an infinite supply, cost-free supply of this other stuff that makes it so I don't have to deal with this complication. To try to resist that is fun. Ultimately fun. At first, it's humiliating, but ultimately, I think it's more fun than the funnest fun you can think of. That's me anyway. Okay, Oprah. Yeah, and you get a theory, and you get a theory, and you get a theory. That's right. Yeah, that's right. And also, it is fascinating to me that we got Dr. Phil and Dr. Oz out of that. I did write something. This is super short. Um, it would I used it in accompanying a picture of Dr. Oz, RFK, and I'm forgetting his name. He was partnered for a while with, oh, for God's sakes, am I going to forget her name too? It'll come back to me, but I say it'd be great if we got better at anticipating which free thinkers will end up shit for brains. Um, uh, the attraction to being a public intellectual, and once you're there, mostly by seducing people into thinking they've got a complete answer, um, makes every reader feel like a genius, makes a public intellectual feel like a genius. That's all the appetite for completeness. So that's a tension I deal with. I mean, I put out some videos this week that got 300 views. And for a while, I was getting 1,500. So there's a part of me thinking, am I saying it wrong? Am I saying it offensively? Is there anything I can do to maximize this? At the same time, I don't want to be the public intellectual who's just enjoying being the leader of a circle jerk. I mean, I kind of do, but no, I couldn't do it. I can't. I'm The questions have gotten too interesting. They've gotten so interesting that I'm more interested in them than who loves me. So I do deal with that tension. I'm a human being. I like to know that I'm on a path. Well, for one thing, most basically, I'd like to know that I'm not shit for brains. Um, but I haven't gone off the deep end in all this independent or free thinking. So there's a way in which I want audience that could say, tap me on the shoulder and say, Jeremy, come back to reality. And at the same time, you're not necessarily going to get that from a larger audience. You'll get the opposite of it. And I'm only noticing now in this conversation that I wish was a conversation and will be if you send me your email. I'm only noticing at this minute that that's also what I dealt with in partnership. I would often partner with someone driven by all of those standard human emotions, some of them hormonally subsidized. That is, there's strong sexual attraction to someone. But my explanation or rationalization for diving into it was that this person's going to be a useful reality check for me. And then I would find out over time, not a reality check. It's actually another person who wants certain things from me, and so, yeah, they'll teach me to be nice, but by their standards. And that's why I've been single for 10 years. And it's also an expression of this ambivalence I have about audience. I'd actually prefer a curious audience, like I think you guys are, to an audience that is enjoying the scornography and venting that they could get from an influencer online. And I'm lucky enough to not need that audience and the revenue that comes from it, that I can actually afford to do this. More pushback. Yeah, more pushback, but it's a question of which pushback, Jeff. Um, I want the right pushback, not the wrong pushback. And I noticed this in partnership too. The way I thought of it at the time was I want to be rubbed right and wrong the right ways, not the wrong ways. So rubbed right would be affirmation, to have a partner approve of me. It's a good thing. It's a dangerous thing. I want that approval. It's a core motivation for me as a human being, but I don't want to get that approval for doing things that grow me in the wrong directions. So I want to be rubbed right, that is stroked or hugged or jerked off, whatever you want to say, for doing what I aim to do, not what I don't aim to do. An example of what that would be, uh, you see it in some couples. I even wrote it up as a song once. One partner gets chubby and doesn't like the imbalance of being chubby with a skinny partner, and therefore encourages their partner to overeat. I wrote it up as a song called "Let's Get Fat." It's a love song, um, and I'm gonna actually find it and read it on here. And the same for being rubbed wrong. That is, I want them to be disappointed in me when I'm not growing in the directions I aim to grow. I do not want to be uh, disapproved of, rubbed the wrong way for doing what I aim to do. Here it is. It's a middle-aged spread love song. This is quite the bind, the way we're intertwined. We both love hot bod sexing, so find it very vexing that our other greatest pleasure is eating without measure. And if we're being frank, between sausage fests and franks, food's more fun. Food's fun is more immediate, reliable, expedient. I kinda hate admitting it. Food's more fun than hitting it. Our hot bod days are waning, and no, I'm not complaining. I'm saying maybe we should admit our choice is free food. Let's get our sex from porno, eat pizza from DiGiorno. Close eyes, hold pudgy hands, retire our hot sex glands, say yes to second rounds, accept the extra pounds. We've had our sex at bat. Ready, go now. Let's get fat. I showed that to my neighbor buddy. She loved the concept of this. This was the Nobel Prize winner in poetry. Uh, she always complained about my rhythm in poems. She was extremely persnickety about that, but she did. she liked the concept. I can say that much for it. It was fun being friends with her. She was incredibly cranky about such things. I mean, on her 80th birthday, we went out to dinner for her 80th birthday, and I tried to recite for her my poem about reincarnation. She believed in astrology. She's a Nobel Prize winner in literature who believed in astrology and loved Schitt's Creek, the TV show, enough that she watched the whole series 3 times. I still haven't gotten into it, but then again, I still haven't gotten into Star Wars. The dialogue's too clunky for me. Um, and after dinner at a fancy restaurant, she was a food connoisseur. She wanted to go out and buy a copy of People magazine. She was a total hoot. But I tried to recite to her my limerick: reincarnation, real incarnation. Reincarnation is real. Just how will reduce its appeal? It's your seeds and your deeds, not your soul. It recedes, hopping off after once round the wheel. It's short. She wouldn't let me recite it because a limerick in its a form has to have a pickup note. Uh, you have to have what in music we'd call an anticipation. So the fact that uh, it didn't have da 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 da. She said, "No, I don't want to hear." Her loss. Okay, let's see if we've got anything here to follow up on. Let's see. Good opportunity for sportsmanship. I'm just gonna pick up on this where we just came off lopsided 13-1 with my kids soccer team. Your team, Michael, your daughter's team won last week, right? So it goes. I missed those sports and I notice how it plays out in me. I was at most a fencer. I was in the counterculture era when we thought of jocks as squares. And I didn't realize what a great education in winning and losing it is. Um, a good opportunity to learn sportsmanship is exactly the point. And as a result, I noticed that while I am very game for all sorts of unscored sports, like all of the stuff we do in philosophy, um, I get a little uncomfortable when I see the numbers, when I'm losing at a board game, or even when I'm losing playing a video game by myself. I can feel a little chump. I'm a bit of a wuss that way. I could use a little bit more sportsmanship in the realm of quantifiable success and failure. I have no excuse for it. Other than I wish that I'd spent some time in those sports. I also had an advantage as a fencer because I'm left-handed, and they're not used to. Most people aren't used to dealing with left-handed fencers, and I'm used to dealing with right-handed fencers. So the one time I've ever won anything at sports, it was second place at University of California, Santa Cruz in the fencing department, strictly because I was left-handed. That's the only reason I got that far. I wasn't that good. All right. Let's see. As manic depressive for 23 years and ingrained not to trust my feelings. Um, this does relate to something. This is Rev Walt talking earlier, long before I got so long-winded. Um, what am I to do? This medium is nothing but me being long-winded. Thank you for your patience. Let's see. Um, I have trouble with my own field of research. I have trouble with the taxonomy uh, of um, terminology, manic depressive for 23 years. I have trouble with Dr. Romani, not only because she's got a bigger audience than me, there's certainly that part of it. I feel chumped by that, but also because it's so damn tidy. And once again, you've got these unexplained explanations at a very high level. And they're mostly descriptive. They're like troubleshooting for an engineer, and I'm trying to do something else. But it is fascinating how influential those terms can be, and in both directions. So to not trust your feelings, I don't want to trust my feelings all the way. By the way, I, feelings are incredibly convincing, and they're already displaced from reality. I mean, the idea that that feeling is truth is something I have to work against. So I don't want to trust my feelings all the way. I want to be able to ride out my manic and depressive moments. But also, it also becomes a form of self-flattery, a way of playing victim. I mentioned this before that when I taught rhetoric and scientific writing and stuff like that for a while at a local private college. And a student came up to me on the first day of class and said, "You're going to have to cut me some slack because I am obsessive compulsive." And then I read her stuff, and I thought, no, I only wish you were obsessive compulsive. This is sloppy. Um, they're all I think of all the disorders as having complementary orders. I want to be obsessively compulsive about my work. I that's My addiction is to being obsessively compulsive. It's one of the reasons why people do read me as a prick. I'm super fussy about language. A buddy of mine just sent me this book that he wrote. This is a guy I've loved for years. It's about 85. Let's see. A Symphony of Smithereens, How Our Universe Composes Itself. Um, uh, uh, this is kind of like a swan song book by his own standards. He's mostly worked in politics and activism. I think he came up with the most brilliant political solution to climate change. And not only I thought that, but Hillary Clinton thought so. She says so in her memoir. But he now moved into this last hurrah kind of book about what it all means. And the language is poetry. And I'm super fussy about it. I stopped. He said he wants my critique of this book. He said it was in part inspired by seeing what I did with my book, but he's using poetry in a way that I'm trying to avoid. So yeah, I want to be obsessive compulsive about that, and I actually want to be a little manic depressive too, but as a kind of order, not disorder. I think it's the proper response to reality to have some area where you fuss obsessive compulsively, some area where you go up and down, where you're actually riding something, you care about something enough that you get some manicness out of it, some depression out of it. Once again, it's a question where you point that thing and how you harness it. What's it for? Um, I don't want to be manic depressive about my how many views I get, but I do want to have enough skin in the game of getting it right about what the actual fuck we are that I go up and down a little bit. And so it's a matter of how you manage these standard human things and the claim that someone has one. Like where you see this worse is in this accumulation of names for things like narcissism, egomania, gaslighting. No, I think I can say I want to gaslight in the right ways, not the wrong ways. I want I want I want my ego to ride up and down on the right things, not the wrong things. I want my self love to be harnessed to something that actually matters. I want to be flattered for doing what I want to grow towards, not towards what I don't want to grow towards. Um, Careful where you point that thing is kind of the answer of it. I had a fascinating conversation. I'm just take a quick look here and see if I'm missing anything. If I've missed something and they're using explanations like a cudgel, yeah, that's right. I still think there's a long way to go with neurology, psychiatry, psychology. Yes, we could have a field day on that, but don't want to distract. It is the point I'm trying to make, Rev Walt, which is these are incredibly early days in the sciences of the mind, and it ain't rocket science. It's way harder than rocket science. And so this sense of completeness, as early as it is pathetic. And I mean, it's inappropriate is all I gotta say about it. We don't know what's going on there. And we should try to find out, and some models are better than others. One of the things that Terry and I talked about this morning is this: you get this argument that the map is not the territory, um, or that all models are wrong, some are useful. That's an overstep in the right direction. Yeah, maps are not territories. They are, in fact, compressions of territories, just like DNA is a compression of the dynamics of an existing organism. Remember, I think that organisms have to be there before DNA becomes a way to compress or record it. and the whole process of decompression and compression is what we're studying these days, Terry and I. Um, but it's to claim that all models are detached from reality or that all models are wrong. Nah, that ain't how it goes. Some models are better, more representational of what's real. And the question that I have to deal with is by what standard? If it's not going to just be that I really like my model or my model has some empirical evidence, anything can have empirical evidence. That's most evident in psychology. You can always find evidence for opposite consequences in psychology. Um, so what is the standard? How do you know which model is better than which? And it can't just be that it's useful. That's called instrumentalism, which is look, we don't actually need to figure out what there is in the real world. We just need models that are practical for us. They provide predictive utility. So I'm not there. I got to really fuss over by what standard do you know which model is better? Um, okay, let's see. Where was I going? Um, Embrace your inner wuss. Thank you, Jeff. That's what I'm talking about. The inner wuss in me is like, oh, people don't like my views and my videos. I, I I I must be doing it wrong, or maybe that whole thing. My inner wuss was also looking for a partner. I know where I was going to go. So I just got back from Mexico yesterday morning, and it was an okay trip. I have bought a place down there I wish I hadn't bought, and it's doing okay, but, I wish I hadn't bought it. But on the last night, I'm sitting in the town square. This is in the town of San Miguel de Allende, an extremely romantic town, um, that at first I've disapproved of and then went down there and got enchanted by the romantic. That's the inner wuss of me. That's why I ended up buying a place down there. It could have come in handy at some point. But I'm sitting in the town square and I had this conversation with a woman who's just sitting there. She's about 55. There's no chemistry wasn't the thing, and I was really glad of that. I wasn't looking to have that conversation. And we got into a conversation that I just found phenomenal. I learned from it. This is a woman who works as a cleaning lady in an Airbnb down there. Very different life from mine. Um, we had the conversation in Spanish, which I was pleased to see my Spanish still worked well enough for a kind of profound philosophical conversation, though I'm sure I mangled the shit out of the language, but and she was gracious enough to tolerate my confusion. But we were able to talk about stuff. So it was two human beings sitting on a park bench talking about the whole wide world and us in it. She had been with two guys, had three, she was married for 13 years. Um, Left both of them because they were philandering, which is a very standard thing down in Mexico. Is the from what I understand, is that the men will marry and then they'll chase tail and they'll be okay with it. It's almost like proof that they're macho, and their wives will be frustrated by it. So she left, been raising the kids alone for the last 8 years, um, uh, on a shoestring budget. Um, Deeply religious, um, uh, and yet was able to hear my atheism just fine. And we got on the question of how you get your abrazos, your hugs, your reassurances, your affirmations. And by the end of it, we were both on the same page about it being a kind of a practical question. So she doesn't have family living nearby. She's got the kids, but one of them is wayward, and she just wishes she could sort of be free of all the complications. The other two are off on their own, having their own lives, and she feels lonely. So she doesn't have family, and she has very few friends down there. And yet there was nothing hungry about her. She wasn't reaching out to me to be something for her. And we got into and she feels, I asked her, "Why did you get together with those guys?" And she said, "Por tanto," for stupidity. And I said, "Yeah, that's kinda like how I feel about my house down there. It's an encumbrance I got, but why did I get it? For the abrazos. There was something about it, the reinforcement, the hugs or something." So we got into this great conversation about, okay, so you need hugs, you need affirmation. You're a human being. Um, and you can get them a variety of different ways. One of the ways you can get them is kind of the way I do, but also the people who who believe in God do. That is, acting as though you've got an audience is a way to give yourself affirmation that the reassurance you need, even if the audience isn't listening. So it's an idea that hit me years ago when I wrote an article called Gods, Dogs, and Blogs, because I saw that in all three cases, you're talking to someone who's not necessarily listening. Probably, no, they're not listening. I was writing this at a time when my audience was tiny. Um, and I was employing what I call strategic gullibility to pretend I had an audience. It would motivate me to write more articles because I pretended that my audience cared. That's what we do when we talk to dogs. That's what we do when we talk to God. Whether it exists or not, you can still get off on that. And then we got into a conversation for shopping. Where for shopping for where you're going to get your reassurance. And I said, yeah, I do the same thing you do with God. I do it differently. I play music or watch videos, and I feel like the hero in the video, or I feel like I'm on the side of goodness against bad or toughness against, I play video games. I can't remember whether I mentioned masturbation, but it belongs on the list. I said, you got to get it somewhere. You got to exercise that appetite for affirmation somewhere. And I had no problem with you doing it with God. We also talked a little bit about Trump. She had some background about that. And then the other question we got into is, can you wean yourself down? Can you go on an affirmation diet so you don't need as much of it? Because she was kind of thinking it was dangerous for me to be so hungry for affirmation from guys. So this also related to the shopping question. Yeah, I want my affirmation, but I don't want affirmation that drags me in directions that aren't healthy. You can get affirmation from heroin. You suddenly feel like a saint, genius, whatever. No pain, like you've solved reality, all of that. But it's dangerous. So that's part of the shopping question. But also, can you wean? So that one's related to the hungry shall soon be eaten. If you're really hungry for affirmation, you are an easy mark for con artists. Um, but I love the exchange for dealing with this question of how are we going to manage, how are we going to exercise our need for affirmation? Where are you going to do it? Okay, so there's that. As Hegel shows, there's no completion of the dialectic, no ultimate synthesis. He didn't even use the word, if I understand correctly. Total, that's interesting because in a way he didn't, and in a way he did. He doesn't end up a complete ironist, at least in some of his writings, and I haven't read much of them. I was once hanging out with this tough university, kind of famous um, philosopher at Duke University, um, and we were all it was a drinking party, and he confessed that he had never read Hegel. He's quite the character. He's a moral philosopher and a beast, total beast of a guy. Anyway, from what I understand, he also does imply that there is an omega point where you do get completion. And from what I understand, he also pointed to it being in the direction of um, uh, where his society was going. So this relates to something I've also been back to this week, is that this is what I call fruitful exercises in futility. A no ultimate synthesis would be an admission that it's fruitful but futile. So that's my attitude about trying to put a fine objective point on a definition of what distinguishes an asshole. I think of it as a fruitful exercise in futility. This week, I also noticed that life is like that. I am obsessed with staying alive, and I have lost. I mean, the day I was born, I'd lost that game. There's a limit to how far I can keep this game going. So fruitful exercises in futility, and whether you think that's it or fruitful exercises in ultimate solutions. And you see the tension of it. Like I said earlier, I just re-listened to Plato's Republic, and he's dealing with that same issue. There's a part of him that wants to say it's just ongoing dialectic where you can challenge all your assumptions. And there's also a way in which he's trying to get to the bottom line. Okay. Right, for the right and wrong reasons, for doing what you aim to do right. It's getting me crazy. I'm meow, meow, meow. I like that. Um, Me owl. I like that. Yeah, that's one of the tensions about connecting with anyone. Um, is that you're stuck dealing with them being another human being, them having their own priorities. Where you stand depends on where you sit. I'm going to put a URL into the if I can find it here quickly enough. Um, this last week, I re-listened to to a play. My dad had this copy of a play on his LP shelf, After the Fall by Arthur Miller. It's autobiographical. Arthur Miller was married to Marilyn Monroe. Monroe is in this thing, but I strongly recommend it. I probably listened to it 30, 40 times, and first time maybe at 9 years old, and somehow it has stuck with me. It is beautifully crafted. This is a play acted out. You have no trouble following the play, who's talking. That's all clear. And yet the play all goes on in one guy's mind as he's talking to, you could say, a therapist who's not really, he barely shows up. There's only one place where the therapist, you can tell that the therapist has said, um, uh, uh, get back to your point. But all the actors Marilyn Monroe shows up in it. The dialogue show up, but it's all going on inside his head. Yes, and it's Jason Robards, and Faye Dunaway is a character in it. You got Marilyn Monroe, you got the McCarthy trials, and you've got this guy, a lawyer, who's struggling with the fact that he really wants to connect with other people, and yet there's only so much you can connect with there. It's a little bit like sex between porcupines. That is, we're prickly, and one of the things he's dealing with directly is this human appetite towards what I call exempt by contempt. That is, because I can spot a sin in you, it proves I'm innocent. It's short. It's about 2.5 hours, and I'm going to see if I can pull it up here and just give you. You can't get the original recording anymore. It didn't ever get transferred to. There's one place you can get it, which is the Internet Archive, um, which is a cool thing, and it's nearby. Here, I found it. I'm gonna be able to give it to you. Um, I strongly recommend it. It's totally intuitive, totally heartfelt. I think you'll find it powerful. Um, there. If someone could check the link to make sure that works, that would be good. But yeah, it's just exquisite for dealing with this problem we have connecting with other people. Um, uh, Given that they have their own priorities and their own agendas and all of that. And yeah, so check that out. Okay, this is a banger. Good. I think you're referring to Kyle. I think you're referring to the poem. Okay, I'm gonna use this moment for another station identification, just to say, email me if you're interested in having this conversation in a medium other than this. Here's my email. Uh, I won't upsell you on anything. Um, that's not what this is about. I won't be sharing your name with anybody. Just what I want to know is. Um, Just say, "I'd like to be in on a Zoom-like conversation, um, and here is the stuff that interests me." And I'll see if I can sort that out into something. And in particular, there's two main areas that we could be talking about. One is the origins and nature of how change changes, all the way through to what are selves in trying and how do they start, as simple as that. Or you could say, to what the actual fuck are we? And then another main area we could be talking about is driving under the influence of language and how you end up with assholes. So in a way, that's part of the study. That's one study group, but this one's a little different from the study group that meets every other Sunday and talks about the Trumpists. It's really more of a workshop. It's not a real. It's not. It's it's not a broad exploration of how people end up becoming absolutists. It's really trying to be practical. The conversation about the nature and origins of life would be much more trying to get clear on what we actually are. So those are two main areas. But if you say, if I heard from enough people who said, "Yeah, I'm having trouble making partnership work," we could do that too, and this all be free. It's just a conversation. It's just us sitting on a park bench in the town square, which we can do so easily. Um, okay, I will check out Todd McGowan on Hegel. Um, and here's another thing is I love, like I said earlier, I love intellectual history. Um, and I also am not, I don't want to be sticky about it where I think, oh, this guy said this brilliant thing. I mean, you've got dead public intellectuals as well. Here's an example of how that plays out. I got to give a keynote speech at a conference on um, on Ernest Becker's work, The Denial of Death. It was quite a lovely opportunity, and it came from them understanding that I was working with Terry on the how language makes us different, including that we can foresee our own deaths. Um, and uh, and at the conference, they're talking in depth about what Becker said we do when primed on our deaths, which is that we think of an immortality project. Um, if that is that I may die, but I'll live on because I stand for something important. So this would be the kind of thing you'd get from the Trumpists. Um, and that became a whole area of study we could call terror management theory. But at the conference, there were some people who didn't even notice the irony of it saying, this is our mission to convey Ernest Becker's stuff. They didn't notice that they were talking about an immortality project in the service of a guy who had died a few years ago. I find the same around other heroes of mine. They become a way of feeling complete. So I don't do that about any of the philosophers or intellectual. I don't want to do that about them. Maybe I do it around Terry a bit, but we argue. We have wonderful arguments. I mean, I'm delighted that we sustain what I see born in the conversation between Plato and Aristotle. At the origins of philosophy, you get this really interesting pairing of things. Aristotle studies with Plato for 21 years and then starts writing and feels perfectly free to disagree with him. It's not nothing personal. So I have that going on with Terry, which is, I think, different from what I'm worried about with public intellectuals, like Hegel got it right, or the Bible got it right, um, or that Becker got it right. Uh, no, these are useful stepping stones, steps in the right direction, kind of, or sometimes oversteps in the right direction. Uh, yeah, I don't want to get deferential there. I want to keep my mind curious about the questions that follow from the answers, and in a way that gets right back to the thing about Hegel. That's a dialectic is basically recognition that all answers are springboards to next questions. And once again, the question is, could you do that until you get to the end of the line and you finally got it and you've solved reality? And my basic assumption is no, that this is a fruitful, lifelong, fruitful exercise in futility. Going way back up the list, Michael, I'm lucky to be able to have time and space to be able to contemplate the origins of life and what's up with assholes. This came up this morning with someone who was a youngster on the farm on the commune I lived on, and here's what he wrote. Um, uh, he, so he's probably still living in Tennessee. Wow, really? And what are you if not a sinner? Judging someone else for their mistakes, feeling you're somehow better than them. Does that not make you or put you in the same category as them? A golden spoon and an education definitely don't make you a better person, just more fortunate and apparently more arrogant. So this is a guy, I don't think I've talked to him in years, but he lashed out when I had written this thing about flags being the cheapest way for traitors to pose as patriots and crosses as the cheapest way for sinners to pose as saints. So this is why I keep on having to say I'm lucky. I had to deal with this woman I met in the park, the cleaning woman who I had the 2-hour conversation with. She's kind of deferential, professor. And I said, no, just dumb luck. It's just dumb luck. Um, this is what I wrote back to the guy. Hi, Chris. Nice to hear from you. You're on a very important conundrum to me. For me, maybe you feel you have the answer to it. Let he who is without sin let him cast the first stone. A lot of people are satisfied with that answer. I hear from lots of people who tell me I'm arrogant, some because I was fortunate enough to be born with a golden spoon and have an education, but mostly because I cast stones. I'm not satisfied with that answer to my conundrum. Have you noticed how arrogant it is to call someone arrogant as if you're the authority on arrogance? Shaming people for shaming, judging people for judging. To me, it's more complicated. And I can't even resolve it by shaming you for shaming me for shaming. No, I don't think I'm better human being than other human beings. My koan is if I were them, I'd be doing exactly what they're doing. And I can't resolve this by trying to be egoless, selfless, and non judgmental. That's a very popular solution. For example, I'm a Christian, see, I'm wearing the cross. I'm with Jesus, who was non judgmental. That makes me the authority on who's judgmental. I'll be the judge of who's judgmental. It's anyone who ever judges me. Uh, do you see the conundrum? Or perhaps you don't care about that stuff. All you need to know is what you don't like is sinful. For example, nobody should be born with more than you have, and anybody who does is bad. That's a very popular way to escape caring about the conundrum. If you were offended because you or your friends wear cross or flag, thank you for helping me illustrate my point. Um, Way more than he'll take in, but other people have taken it in. Once again, you're talking to someone with an audience. I I don't know what to do about the kind of luck you're talking about, Michael, which in my case might be more extreme. Really, the first time in my life that I worried about whether I'd have enough money to live on was at 60 fucking 8 years old. In that sense, I'm a total baby. I had enough money. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough to live on. And and so much that I was naive enough to just give millions away when I was young. But what do I do about that? If I don't disclose that this is luck, that I get to spend my time on this, then I pretend that I'm playing on a level playing field, and that's fucking arrogant. It's arrogant for me to pretend that I've had the power to gain this kind of, to follow out this kind of curiosity while you've been out earning a living. That's fucked. But if I declare it, I also run into an opposite problem that I mentioned to in one of these before. I'll just give it briefly. Um, Hanging out with the Nobel Prize winner across the street, she was an inheritor. Her father had started the X-Acto knife business. That was impressive. But she was much more, and she had an incredibly lucky life. I mean, she'd won Pulitzer's, National Book Award, um, poet laureate twice in the United States, and then on top of that, a Nobel Prize. And at one point, I went over to see her during COVID, and she was frustrated because she wasn't seeing her friends, and she was uh, yeah, that she couldn't go out to restaurants. And I said, "Yeah, I'm not having that problem. I feel really lucky. I got this book I'm working on." And she said, "Oh, don't boast. That's your worst trait." And we got into an interesting conversation about whether you have to disclose your good luck or not. It shows up on Facebook. When someone shows off, someone attractive and young shows a picture of them with their hot partner, um, how does that play? In a way, yeah, and you can thank your lucky stars for it and all of that. But it also will feel like putting other people down. So if I say I've got money, it feels like I'm putting people down. If I say I've got freedom, if I don't say it, it's a way of being unfair. So it's fascinating to me. But like all of these kind of conundrums, and this may relate back to the thing about Hegel, I think of them as living tensions. That is, I'll be dealing with that question all life long. And I'm just noticing now it's the opposite. There's an opposite version of it. When you're dealing with someone who is suffering more than you, is it better to, are you showing them more heart by saying, "I know you're in pain," or are you is that do they not wanna hear it? Do they and I've dealt with this one a few times. I had a partner who 6 months into our partnership ended up with this weird blood cancer, and, I couldn't tell whether to acknowledge it or ignore it, and ultimately, I lost her over, the fact I couldn't ignore it. She was extremely stoic about it. She didn't wanna talk about it at all. And I couldn't stop being concerned because it was causing her pain every time she ate, and uh, uh, I was trying to be considerate, but it turned out with her, it was inconsiderate. Yeah, so anyway, those are complicated. I actually dealt with that with another friend just last night who thought that I didn't acknowledge enough her illness and therefore doesn't wanna ever talk to me again, which is fine. We weren't talking much anyway. Um, and I have consolation of thoroughness with that relationship, but there it goes. Okay. I have been watching debates between atheists and theists, and your work is like a guide to seeing how people avoid uncomfortable information. Thank you, MZ Nip. On both sides. Um, I love the work of a guy like Christopher Hitchens. I love his rhetoric, and yet I don't think he's dealing with the more fundamental challenge. And I think the burden is on science to do a better job of explaining how meaning or mattering comes into the world than what we've got with natural selection and the Darwinian approach. Um, Darwin wasn't explaining the struggle for existence. He knew that. He was assuming it. And since then, most of us, including the glotaholic atheists, treat it like that explains everything. And I talked about this recently. It's the defaulty logic problem. Why you need to have why it's really great to have strong opponents. Um, the sciences, the life sciences, the popular versions of the life sciences have been strutting about how true Darwin is um, because of how stupid religion is. And in a way, I've made the counter argument. If you want to find a place where someone really attacks me, go look up a guy named Jerry Coyne who read a few of my articles, and he has a blog site called "Why Evolution Is True." And I'm saying, yeah, evolution is true. It's not the only truth. It's only part of the story. I put out a video last week on another part of the story. It wasn't a perfect video, but it was this thing about mothering as the invention of necessity. Um, I think that's a whole half of the Darwinian story that's missing. We call it inverse Darwinism. But anyway, if you look up Jerry Coyne, he's got two articles that are called "Why Jeremy Sherman is Wrong About Evolution." Um, the first one he put out when he saw something I'd written on Psych Today, and I wanted another attack from him, so I wrote another article so that he would savage me again. Now he's a high level biologist, and you should have seen the swarm of atheists who came online to snicker at me with him. That is, the goon squad was there. It was fabulous how it all played out. And he blocked me. He didn't actually want my content in there. Um, so so watching how that plays out is a is another fascination of mine, as you suggest. And I'm going to read you something I wrote. Um, it's another poem. I don't write. I'll work in any medium. About content, I'm a prude. About delivery, I'm a slut. Uh, let's see. Let me look this up. Here it is. This is a poem I wrote that has to do with what I'll call insight overreach. And this will make sense to you, I think. It's called Permafirmed. We beat old foes just years ago, and so declare it's done. We'll reign supreme. Don't even dream of besting us. We won. Eternal victory now is ours. Our old foes thought it theirs. What fools to think that they were on the top steps of the stairs. It was us and no one else. And then and now and always, forevermore, I'll share the lore done our dark old dog days. I'll tell again the tale of how our triumphal winning went. You heard it all before, you say? Again, it's time well spent. Back in high school, and I made that one decisive point in glory that I can't forget, back before my sore hip joint. Or in November, recently, I won in Pennsylvania. I won the right all day and night to bore and gloat and pain ya. It changes tone. No matter what your victory, there are challengers at your heels. The winner now will later lose, as history reveals. The beauty queen who reigns today, tomorrow lost her luster. Enjoy it while you can, but curb your tendency to bluster. Your religion or your science dotes upon its youthful launch. Let's see, your religion or your science dotes upon its youthful launch, forgets with time all winnings go to upstarts, sans your paunch, without your aged belly thing. Um, okay, so what I'm talking about here is the sense that we had a breakthrough, we resolved it. It's the sense that yeah, it's just that. The the craving for the ultimate win is so tempting. um, okay, all right, here we go. We're almost done here. Anybody who's lasted this long, 5 more minutes. So let me know if there's something I didn't get to here in my monologue tunnel vision reverie. Let's see. Similar situation. Let's see. I've been watching debates between atheists and theists. Yeah, and you watch it also among the free will versus determinists. Uh, there's a way. This does tie back, which is if you're working with high level abstractions, like do we have free will or not? Do we is AI coming alive? Is it not? Um, is there a God? Is there not a God? Any of those, you're in the realm of conclusionism, which is you're not even interested in how. You're not explaining your unexplained explanations. You're working at a high level and you're just drawing conclusions. And yeah, there's excitement and fun to be had in drawing those conclusions and girding your loins for battle and thinking the other guy's an idiot and all of that, like you've solved it and you haven't. Um, that's what would be different about, that's what I think is different about Terry's approach is he's got to explain with no smoke and mirrors from the lowest level sources of explanation, the things we can't explain. I cannot explain. I can explain why the second law, how the second law works, the second law of thermodynamics, how entropy tends to increase. That we get from Boltzmann and beyond. Um, uh, but why would there be order in the first place that would move towards disorder? Like what how we ended up with the Big Bang? I don't know that, and I don't think my generation will explain that, and I don't think we're quite there on uh, quantum mechanics. But I also don't think we need to be in order to understand us, because nothing at that level, the Big Bang. I don't. There's no reason to assume it's trying to do anything. So I've got to explain trying from nothing but the tendency for things to fall apart. And I plan to do a series of videos on that will become, you could say, related to a group if we were to do that. And I think I can do it all in terms of flows, likely and unlikely flows. I think I can explain everything up to assholes, not in detail, but the core how of how you'd ever get everything from the origins, pre-origins of life to organisms. I think there's a way of doing it strictly in terms of flows and counterflows. And you could say biases. That is a tendency for things to flow some directions, not other directions. And when I'm talking about by things, I'm actually mean populations of atoms in motion or molecules in motion. I don't have to go down to the level of atoms. If that interests you, email me. If anything I say interests you, email me and tell me what it is that I say that interests you. And if anything, and if I don't interest you, what the fuck are you doing here? It's Saturday morning. Go do something else. No, I'm grateful. I'm really grateful for you guys to be here. Thank you for this. All right. I'll talk to you guys soon. Email me, email me. Uh, Also, if you got any feedback on how to get more views without becoming a content whore, which I won't do, I can't do it. You let me know. Like Jeremy, you got to do more of this or less of that. About content, I'm a total prude. About delivery, I'm a slut. So help me figure out what I can do to deliver better, knowing that I can't change the content. I'm not gonna. I got to concentrate on. I fuss where I fuss. You know all that. Thank you guys. Thank you all.